Hey everyone! Welcome to The Young and the Restless. I'm Jane, and I'm so excited to have you here. If you love Young and the Restless, then you're in the right place. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a video. Alright, let's dive right in. The Young and the Restless spoilers for the week of July 21st to 25th predict that Kyle Abbott will turn on Victor Newman, while Kane Ashby and Amanda Sinclair point fingers. Jack Abbott will also receive a tough rejection, so here's what YNR has in store. For starters, Billy Abbott's decision to refuse Jack's cash and instead seek Kane's backing would exacerbate their disagreement. When Billy and Phyllis Summers realize the possibility for a new alliance, they will agree to devise a strategy to get Kane off the hook for the crimes he is accused of. Kyle will then confront Audra Charles about her scheme and put an end to any romantic feelings between them. Audra will understand she is in trouble when Victor insists that in order for Vibrante to move forward, Audra must split up with Kyle and Claire Newman. While Audra tries to come up with another solution, Kyle will be busy telling Nikki Newman about Victor's plot to use Audra to undermine his relationship with Claire. Over with Lily Winters, YNR teasers predict she'll have a tense encounter with Phyllis and maintain her conviction that Kane is guilty of murder. Kane will eventually review the surveillance footage again after the backup is generated at the 24-hour point. Amanda will come along and ask whether Kane is destroying evidence, but he will question if she has already done so since she has access to that office. While Amanda and Kane point fingers at one another, Carter will place Nick and Sharon Newman under home arrest, though he will most likely keep this information hidden. Nick and Sharon will be stranded someplace on the property, therefore Nick will try to find an escape route. Unfortunately, Nick's plan will backfire when he is injured. Sharon and Sally Spectra will assist Nick, who will be bleeding from his abdomen once the scheme fails. Billy will eventually meet with Sally and pay attention to a victim, so he may recognize Nick's pain and do his bit to help. Victor and Chance Chancellor plan to question Carter extensively. Carter admits to being devoted to Mr. Dumas, but denies any involvement in Damian Kane's death. Again, Carter may be lying to cover his tracks, so don't count him out as a suspect yet. Finally, Nikki will be in a dangerous scenario. Someone may corner Nikki, thus the killer may decide to strike again, putting her life at risk. Lily had always considered herself observant, the kind of person who noticed the little things, the way the morning light slanted through the kitchen window just so, the faint scent of rain before a storm, the subtle shifts in people's expressions when they were hiding something. But nothing could have prepared her for what she saw that evening, the image seared into her mind like a brand, Chance, standing in the dim glow of the garage, his back turned to her, slipping something into the pocket of his jacket. At first, she thought it might be his phone or his wallet, something ordinary, something harmless. But then the light caught the edge of it, cold, sharp, unmistakable, a knife. Her breath hitched, her fingers tightening around the grocery bag she carried as if they could anchor her to reality. Chance wasn't supposed to be home yet, he told her he was working late, that he wouldn't be back until after dinner. So why was he here, in the garage, hiding a knife? Her mind raced, fragments of conversations and half-remembered suspicions colliding like shards of glass. Damian's name surfaced like a ghost, unbidden, unwelcome. Damian, who had been found dead 2 weeks ago in the alley behind the old diner, his body slumped against the brick wall, a single, brittle wound to the chest. The police had no leads, no suspects, just a lot of questions and a town on edge. Lily hadn't wanted to think about it, hadn't wanted to believe that someone she knew could be capable of such violence. But now, standing frozen in the doorway, she couldn't stop the flood of doubts crashing over her. Chance had known Damian. Not well, but they'd crossed paths, at the gym, at the bar, sometimes in passing at neighborhood barbecues. There had never been any obvious tension between them, no public arguments, nothing to suggest animosity. But Lily knew better than anyone how little that meant. People hid things, even from those closest to them. She thought of the nights Chance had come home late, his clothes smelling of sweat and something metallic she couldn't place. The way he'd been quieter than usual lately, more withdrawn, jumping at unexpected noises. She'd chalked it up to stress, to the long hours he'd been pulling at work. But now, with the knife in his pocket and the furtive way he'd tucked it away, she wondered if there was something darker at play. Her pulse thundered in her ears as she took a step back, her sneaker squeaking against the concrete floor. Chance whirled around, his eyes wide, startled. For a heartbeat, they just stared at each other, the air between them thick with unspoken accusations. Then, his expression shifted, the surprise melting into something softer, almost guilty. "Lily," he said, his voice too casual, too light. "I didn't hear you come in." She forced a smile, her grip on the grocery bags turning her knuckles white. "Yeah, just got back. I didn't know you were home." He nodded, his gaze flickering to the pocket where the knife was hidden, then back to her face. "Yeah, got off early. Thought I'd get some stuff done out here." She wanted to ask about the knife, to demand an explanation, but the words stuck in her throat. What if he had a reason? What if it was nothing? Or worse, what if it was everything? She couldn't bring herself to say it, not yet. Instead, she nodded toward the house. "I'll start dinner." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Sounds good." As she turned away, her mind was already spinning, replaying every interaction, every odd moment from the past few weeks. The night Damian died, Chance had been out. He'd said he was at the gym, but when she'd called, his phone had gone straight to voicemail. When he'd come home, his hands had been shaking, his nails bitten to the quick. She'd asked if he was okay, and he'd brushed her off, muttering something about a tough workout. At the time, she'd believed him. Now, she wasn't so sure. Dinner was a quiet affair, the clink of silverware against plates the only sound in the room. Chance kept his eyes down, shoveling food into his mouth like it was a chore. Lily watched him, her stomach churning. She wanted to believe there was an innocent explanation, that the knife was for something mundane, maybe he'd found it somewhere, maybe he was planning to clean it, maybe it was a tool for some project he hadn't mentioned. But the way he'd hidden it, the way he was acting now, it didn't add up. After dinner, she busied herself with the dishes, scrubbing at a plate long after it was clean, her thoughts a tangled mess. She heard Chance move behind her, felt his presence like a weight. "You okay?" he asked, his voice low. She swallowed. "Yeah. Just tired." He hesitated, then reached past her to put a glass in the sink, his arm brushing against hers. She flinched, and he pulled back, his brow furrowing. "Lily?" She turned to face him, her heart pounding. "What were you doing in the garage earlier?" The question hung between them, heavy and dangerous. Chance's expression darkened, his jaw tightening. For a second, she thought he might lie, might deflect. But then he sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I didn't want you to worry," he said. "Worry about what?" He looked away, his voice dropping to a whisper. "I found it. The knife. In the park, near where Damian was killed." Lily's blood ran cold. "What?" "I was walking home from the gym that night," he continued, his words rushed, like he needed to get them out. "I saw something glinting in the grass. I picked it up, and, I don't know, I panicked. I thought if the police found it on me, they'd think I did it. So I took it. I've been trying to figure out what to do with it ever since." She searched his face, looking for any sign he was lying. His eyes were wide, earnest, but there was something beneath the surface, something she couldn't quite place. "Why didn't you tell me?" He shook his head. "I didn't want you involved. If I'm wrong about this, if someone saw me, I didn't want you caught up in it." It made sense. It almost sounded plausible. But something still nagged at her, a thread of doubt she couldn't ignore. "Chance," she said slowly, "did you have anything to do with Damian's death?" His face went pale. "No. God, no." "Lily, how could you even ask me that?" She wanted to believe him. She really did. But the knife, the secrecy, the way he'd been acting, it was all too much. "I don't know," she whispered. "I just don't know." The silence that followed was suffocating. Chance stared at her, his eyes wounded, and for a moment, she thought he might cry. Then, without a word, he turned and walked away, leaving her standing there, the weight of her suspicion pressing down on her like a stone. That night, she lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sound of Chance's steady breathing beside her. Was he innocent? Or was she lying next to a killer? The knife was still out there, hidden somewhere, a silent witness to the truth. And until she knew for sure, she couldn't shake the feeling that nothing would ever be the same again. Lily had never expected her evening to end like this. The soft echoes of her heels tapping against the polished marble floors of the Chancellor mansion were now drowned out by the loud thud of her heart. She had only come to check in on Chance, who hadn't shown up for an important follow-up meeting about the Damian case, something he was too personally and professionally invested in to miss. They'd all been shaken by Damian's sudden death. The man had been charismatic, layered, and dangerous, and while few in Genoa City trusted him, none could deny his death had shaken things up in ways no one expected. But this? This was something Lily could never have anticipated. She stood in the doorway of Chance's guest room, hidden just enough by the shadows to remain unnoticed, watching in frozen horror as Chance knelt by his bed and carefully lifted the mattress to retrieve something glinting. Her breath caught in her throat when she saw it clearly. A knife. A long, silver blade, stained faintly along the edge with something that looked like it could be dried blood. Her mind struggled to make sense of what she was seeing. Chance Chancellor, former cop, the moral compass of their community, a man who'd been tirelessly pursuing Damian's killer for days, was now crouched in front of her with a possible murder weapon in his hand. Was this some kind of mistake? A planted weapon? Was Chance protecting someone? Or was it exactly what it looked like? As she stared at the sharp glimmer in the dim lamplight, every interaction she'd had with Chance in the past few weeks started replaying like broken glass in her mind. He had been edgy. Not the kind of restless that came from grief or frustration, but a tightly wound, volatile kind of tension. There were moments when his eyes would dart too quickly when someone brought up Damian, or how he would abruptly change the subject when anyone asked about that night at the lake house. Lily had chalked it up to trauma. She knew firsthand how darkness could settle into someone's spirit and shift them quietly into someone unrecognizable. She had been there once herself. But now, seeing Chance with the knife, his hand trembling slightly as he looked at it, almost as if he were debating whether to hide it again or confess, made her question everything she thought she knew about the man. Did he kill Damian? And if he did, why? Her throat tightened. She dared not make a sound. She didn't want to alert him until she figured out what to do. She pulled back quietly, hiding deeper in the shadows of the hallway, her thoughts racing. Was she supposed to confront him? Call the authorities? But who could she even trust at this point? So much had been off since Damian returned to town. His secret business dealings, the way he charmed his way into people's lives, the threatening texts that began circulating just before his death, texts that hinted at betrayal, at vengeance, at someone trying desperately to bury old sins. Chance had been one of the last people to see Damian alive. That much they knew. But the official story had always been thin, a brief, confrontational meeting at the Abbott cabin, followed by Chance heading home after they agreed to talk later. Only they never did. Damian was found dead the next morning, stabbed once in the abdomen and left to die near the boathouse. Forensics had been murky. There was no DNA at the scene beyond Damian's own, no fingerprints, no usable security footage. The knife had never been recovered. Until now. Lily's knees nearly buckled beneath her. The timeline had never quite added up, but no one had dared to say it, no one had dared to suggest that one of Genoa City's own might be capable of cold-blooded murder. And now, as she watched Chance tuck the knife into a dark duffel bag and zip it shut, her stomach flipped. Why had he kept it? Why not turn it in, even if he found it later? Was it guilt? Panic? Or something darker? She remembered the night of Damian's death too clearly now, the frantic phone calls, the way Chance had disappeared for nearly 2 hours before arriving at the crime scene out of breath and strangely disheveled. She'd asked him about it then, but he'd shrugged her off, saying he had gone for a run to clear his head. Lily had wanted to believe him. But standing here now, those excuses felt paper-thin. She couldn't help but replay their most recent conversations. Chance had become increasingly withdrawn. He had stopped answering texts promptly, missed meetings, and sometimes looked over his shoulder as if expecting to be followed. There had been flashes of paranoia. Moments when he'd snap at friends or go silent in the middle of conversations about the case. Was he cracking under guilt? Or had he been playing them all this entire time, orchestrating a false search for a killer while hiding the truth in plain sight? Lily's pulse roared in her ears. She knew she couldn't leave this alone. But how could she betray someone she had once trusted so deeply? Her connection with Chance was built on shared loss, resilience, and understanding. He had supported her when no one else did. But now, all of that felt like a distant memory, clouded by the haunting possibility that he may be Damian's killer. She had to act, but delicately. If Chance was guilty and realized she knew, he could be dangerous. But if he was innocent, if there was some explanation, then she risked destroying a man's life based on a single terrible assumption. Still, it was too much of a coincidence to ignore. The knife. The blood. The lies. The silence. She felt her fingers numb as she backed away from the hallway and stepped out of the house, her breaths now shallow and uneven. The night air hit her like a slap, cold, bracing, pulling her back into her body. She didn't know where she was walking to. Only that she had to move. The familiar lights of Genoa City blurred around her as tears welled in her eyes, not just from fear, but from heartbreak. She didn't want to believe it. Not about Chance. But sometimes, the people we love most are the ones who carry the darkest secrets. Lily thought about Damian's last words to her, weeks before he died. There's more going on in this town than you know. People you trust are lying to you. At the time, she assumed it was a ploy, a way to destabilize her and bring her into his web. But now, she wasn't so sure. Maybe Damian had been telling the truth. Maybe Chance's lie was the deadliest of them all. As she walked aimlessly toward Chancellor Park, Lily tried to collect her thoughts. She needed proof. She needed someone she could confide in. Someone who wouldn't jump to conclusions but could help her untangle this mess. Nick? Too impulsive. Phyllis? Too self-serving. Billy? He had his own baggage. Maybe Sharon. She had a calmness, a wisdom in her that Lily trusted. And she had experience in dealing with trauma, with peeling back layers of guilt and shame. But even as Lily considered her options, she knew time was running out. If Chance realized she saw the knife, he might panic. He might run. Or worse, he might try to silence her. The thought made her shiver. She pressed a hand to her chest, willing her breath to slow, her mind to clear. She had to be strong. Not just for herself, but for the truth. Damian may have been flawed, but no one deserved to die like that. And if Chance had killed him, for whatever reason, justice had to be served. Lily had always believed in redemption, in second chances, but not at the cost of someone's life. She glanced down at her phone, fingers trembling as she considered dialing 911. But something held her back. Not yet. Not until she had more. Not until she knew why. She had to talk to Chance. She had to look him in the eyes and ask the question. The one that had begun burning in her soul the moment she saw that blade. Did you kill Damian? And as much as she dreaded the answer, she knew, deep down, that whatever came next would change everything.